Hola, bienvenidos todos. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending where you're watching from. Welcome to En Casa con la Plaza. This is La Plaza de Cultura y Artes series of conversations, presentations, demonstrations, and performances from our home to you. We do it 3, sometimes 4 or more times per week. It's our way of fulfilling La Plaza's mission of telling those little known, unknown stories of Mexicans, Mexican Americans, and all Latinos in the founding, growth, and evolution of the greater Los Angeles area and beyond. If you're joining us on Zoom, you know how to do it. Just chat, send us a comment, let us know where you're coming from. Click on the Q&A if you have a question, and we'll get to it, if not during the program, after the conversation. If you're on Facebook Live, same. You could leave a comment, wave to us, ask a question, let us know where you're viewing from, and share on your own Facebook. Start a watch party. Share these fabulous conversations that we're going to have tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to bring out Dan Guerrero, your gracious host for this most happy hour. Come on up, Dan.
And the more I sip this, the more gracious I become. How was your week?
My week has been okay. It's, as you know, we're suffering through this heat wave, and unfortunately last weekend, my central AC at home went out.
Yikes, yikes.
But fortunately, we got ourselves a nice little portable AC in one room. And so we stay in that room.
So everybody's in that one room.
Yes.
Well, they have those that you can move room to room now, también.
Well,
I don't know how they work, but.
I don't know. This one stays in one room, and I'm happy to be in there.
Okay.
But before we begin, Dan, I hear you have a big announcement.
I do?
Care to share?
About what?
Well, let's see. How's that?
Oh, yeah, look at that. Look at that panza. Yes, that's very exciting, I have to say. Outfest Los Angeles, which I believe is the largest LGBTQ film festival in the world. It's huge, and like most film festivals, this year they suddenly had to be online. So yeah, my Gaetino film will start streaming August 25th. It's very interesting because yeah, it's not the same as running to festivals and meeting people, but they're going to reach so many more people. And one of the hard things about being at film festivals, 6 films at 2 o'clock, and you can only pick one. But now you can pick any movie you want because like mine, like all of them, they start streaming. Mine starts on the 25th, like at 12:30 a.m., but it's on and available for 72 hours. So you can see twice, 3 times, which you will want to, or you don't have to miss any film. You see them all. So thank you for that. That's very exciting. I'm very proud of that.
You're welcome, and I hope
this coming Tuesday.
I hope everybody joins in. It's you could get your passes at outfestnow.com. You could get an Outfest pass with 160 plus films, including filmmaker and celeb conversations and live events for the low price of over these 11 days for $59.99, or a special Latinx Voices, which is a package which includes Gaetino for the low price of $20. Again, go to outfestnow.com. So with that commercial,
I think that's it. I think so. Not just go to Outfest LA, it will pop up, but it is amazing. And as I say, this way you can see any film. Thank you for that. I love that.
You're welcome. And if you stick around, we'll show you a little trailer for it.
Oh, that'll get them. They're going to run right to the online after the show, right?
All right.
It is a good show.
I'm going to sign off now, Dan, and it's all you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for joining me tonight. Do we have a guest? Or was that the show? Yes, we have a wonderful guest. He's another dear friend. That's the cool thing. I get to have my friends on, people I love, and we have conversations like we normally do. Well, not totally, but you know, and you get to eavesdrop. My guest tonight is a high-powered executive, long time. He's currently the executive director of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, which is a fantastic organization. And he is an out and proud man who founded Honor 21, which is an online presence that celebrates the LGBTQ Latino community. And that is the horse of a totally different rainbow color. Or is it? Because I'll bet you $1, there's quite a few gay Hispanic journalists. And maybe we can get some names out of them. I don't know. Zoom in, Alberto B. Mendoza.
Hola, buenas noches. Salud.
Hey, how are you? Oh, you got your, what is your drink of choice?
A little vodka soda with a slice of fruit.
Hey, you're good. And you're out in the Palm Springs area, so you need it.
I need it. It is hot, hot, hot.
Oh my
so
God.
I'm dealing with a similar problem with the AC. So I'm going to be getting lights, and I think I'm probably going through menopause as well. So, yeah.
That's okay. And you know what? Doing the Louis Armstrong thing, you got to wipe your brow.
Yeah.
Go for it.
And by the way, it's Honor 41, not 21.
I said 21?
You did.
Did I really?
But it's okay.
How embarrassing. 21?
21. What were you thinking about?
Never drink before
Panama,
interview.
Panama.
You know what? I was thinking of that dress store, Forever 21, where I do not shop, by the way, for a variety of reasons, you know. Oh, that's funny. I'm sorry. I'm glad you corrected me.
No, that's life.
And, you know, that opening that talking about my film put us in a very, very gay mood. So I'm almost ready to get to the Honor 41, but we're going to start with the Hispanic journalists first. Sure. But the best thing that I love is the story about the number 41 that is so interesting, and it dates back to before the Mexican Revolution in Mexico City. It's a great story he's going to share. So tell us about the National Hispanic Journalists Association. You've been with them as exec director for how long?
It's 5 years now, 5 years, and it has really been a fantastic journey. I came on just after Donald Trump made his comments about Mexicans. And actually,
and threw Jorge Ramos out of the press room.
Yeah, I mean, that actually was what inspired me to even pursue the job. They had approached me about the job, and I had actually said no on 2 different occasions. And then Donald Trump opened up his mouth about Mexicans. And I was just really curious why an organization that had so many Latinos really was not making a greater fuss about what he was saying, because everybody else was. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I thought, when I looked into it, frankly, the organization was just starting to get back on its feet. At the end of the last recession, it took a long time for it to kind of really build up. Latinos, and we know people of color are the ones that are usually discarded first. Diversity initiatives that are the excuse to bring us in are the first things out. And so we ended up at the end of 2011 with about 765 members.
And
so
actually the organization goes back to like 1983 or 4?
84, yeah. We just celebrated our 35th anniversary. And it was really, I came out of CCNMA that actually started in California, but NAH was focused on really the national scope. And so we had journalists like Maria Elena Salinas and others that really were a part of that focus on diversifying newsrooms, especially mainstream newsrooms. They needed to really look like the communities that they were serving. And that was the priority and the focus. And, you know, 35 years later, we've had a lot of success and not so much success. It just really kind of depends on how you look at it. But there is so much more work to be done.
Well, 2 things. First of all, what is your membership now since you came on board?
Well, last week we hit an all-time high of 3,000 members. So yeah, so when I started, we were just at about 1,500. It went up, it went down. So to double that membership in 5 years has been really an incredible feat. We've done a lot of great things. And I think it's a combination of what I brought to the table, but also the times in which we're in. I think that, I hate to say it this way, but Donald Trump has been good for business, in part because it has really brought us together in a way that's
galvanized. He's galvanized.
Yeah, he's attacking Latinos, he's attacking journalists, he's attacking media, and with so many stories at the core of who we are as Latinos, it just naturally brought us together in a different way that I think we see that it's happening now. We've been coming together little by little, and now it's just one of those forces that is coming at you with all strength. And so we still have more work to do, but it is quite the organization now as well. Back to its old glory days.
Yes, yes. There's so many things that I admire about this organization, and one of the, well, okay, a few of them is that it is not only professional journalists, but you have journalism educators, you have teachers, you have journalism students.
Yeah.
So you get into that generational thing, which I'm all about. The generational thing is so important to have the younger and the veteranos. I don't want to say older for obvious reasons, but you know, the veteranos, and tell me about that, some of the programs for some of the young people.
Well, one of the things that was and has always been consistent with NHJ is that at any given time, our membership is between 32 and 35% students. So we invest a lot in that next generation. We offer scholarships. We're averaging about $200,000 to $250,000 in scholarships a year between the national and the chapters that we have. We have 27 student chapters, 20 professional chapters. So we are really committed to developing that next generation, and that's usually who also continue on as our members, and they help others and they help other generations. We also, what our shift has been now is also on professional development for all journalists. So what's been cut in most jobs is that professional development opportunity, but it's really what you need to be able to continue in your career. So now NHJ is focused on training and technical trainings that are going to help with all storytelling. And that's really essential to these days.
Your journalism career started really quite early, and right? But first I want to show a photo. Do we have that photo, Abelardo? This young lady you ran into at a conference, I believe, one of your conferences, and well, tell them the story, because I think it's such a wonderful story. The young lady.
That's an emotional story and a good one. Actually, I ran into Vanessa at a meeting. I met her at a conference, but that was it. And then we had a meeting with her newsroom in San Francisco at the time. And right before the meeting started, we started talking about just our backgrounds. And then we started the meeting, and we were talking with the news director, and she was saying, you know, there are certain things that students and young people need to know. They need to be on time, they need to be professional, they need to dress appropriately. And this young lady, her name is Vanessa, said, well, you know, where I come from, nobody told us what dressing professionally was like. I don't know what that meant. And you know, people assume that we know, but where I come from, that doesn't happen. And she said she was from San Diego. And I said, oh, really? You know, where? And she said she went to a certain high school. And I said, I went to that high school. I went to Montgomery High. And I said, and I started this school newspaper called La Voz Azteca. And she looked at me, I still get kind of these goosebumps. And she looked at me and then started to tear up. And she said that the reason why she was a journalist was because she participated in La Voz Azteca. And that at the time, her mom had just passed away, and the teacher, the professor that was the student, you know, the supervisor of the paper, said, you're a great writer, why don't you come and join us? This is going to be a great outlet. And that experience is what led to her career in journalism.
And I'm sure helped her get,
I'm sorry?
I was going to say, and I'm sure helped her get through a very difficult time. Can we, Abelardo, can we see that up for a few seconds, the clipping? How old are you here?
Oh, gosh.
There
15?
You are.
Yeah. 15. I think 15 or 16 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were already a leader, Well,
you know, I learned an important lesson at that time too, because I had gone to the school paper when I was in 10th grade, and I live, I know as we've talked, by the San Diego-Tijuana border. And so we had a lot of students that crossed the border on a daily basis. And yet we didn't have a lot of Latino students. Even though we were the majority, we did not have a lot of students involved. We had about 70% Latino, Mexican mostly, 25% Filipino, and the Filipino kids really ran the whole school. And so to me, I thought that's kind of odd and interesting, and why aren't we not more involved? And so I went to the school newspaper and said, can you do a calendar just in Spanish that says when the tryouts are, what's happening, when you can get involved? And they said no. They said they're here to learn English. And I thought, okay. The next year, I ran for student body vice president and won. And now I went back to the paper and I didn't ask, now I told them. I learned quickly that, that certain power and positions really change what you can demand. And so I had the same mission as I did the year before. And now I had the ability to actually push them to do it. And so the teacher said, well, if you can find the students and they can write Spanish and, you know, you want to start this, go ahead. And so I did, and it's called, I named it La Voz Azteca. We were the Montgomery Aztecs. And it still continues today, just as Vanessa went through it. And it's a beautiful thing to walk into this room with over 50 max, 2 classes, students that are pursuing education in journalism, communications, PR, and it's something that I'm super proud of, that I started 32 years ago.
You should be proud. You should be proud.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
I love that story. Let's, you know, one time you told me, and I thought it was such an interesting way to put it, I was asking about your growing up or whatever, and you said that you had 2 childhoods, your U.S. childhood and your Puerto Rican childhood.
Yes.
Tell us.
So I was born in Ensenada, right by the, you know, San Diego Tijuana border. My dad is from Jalisco and my mom is from Sinaloa.
You don't get more Mexican than that, honey.
Not more Mexican than that. Trust me. And look at this face. Bien Mexicano. And they met in Tijuana. And so my parents met and married young. And at the time, my dad was in sales for the vacuum cleaners Kirby. And I think anybody who had a Kirby probably still has a Kirby.
Everybody had a Kirby.
Everybody had a Kirby, and paying for it today still probably. So before I was a year old, we moved to Puerto Rico because my dad was asked for him and his team to go to Puerto Rico because they spoke Spanish and open up the area there. And so I really spent the most formative years of my life in Puerto Rico. My younger brothers were born there. And I always say I'm a Mexican with a Puerto Rican heart. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And then we moved to the US and settled right by the San Diego Tijuana border that I was referencing. I mean, I could see Tijuana from our house. It literally was like right over the hill and 3 exits from the border. So I really had two very different experiences growing up. I specifically remember that all of a sudden when I came to the States, there were labels put on me that I had really never experienced.
Sure.
In Puerto Rico, we all spoke Spanish. And yes, we took some classes in English, but everybody spoke Spanish. And it wasn't until later in my life that I looked at pictures from our past and could see that, oh, era chino, era negro, like there were so many.
But all speaking Spanish. All speaking Spanish.
All spoke Spanish. And my parents didn't tell us, okay, that person is from this one, that person is, like, to me, everybody was just different shades, but there wasn't anybody that's signaling out that that's better, that's worse. And that started happening when I was in the United States. Now I came and I didn't know the language. All of a sudden there were, you know, a mixture of kids. I was a very outgoing child, but I became very introverted because I didn't speak English enough or well enough. And we also had rules, and my dad was the opposite of assimilating. My dad made an intentional effort to make sure that we didn't lose our language, how to write it, how to speak it, how to read it. And so we couldn't speak English at home. And every day after school, we had a notebook that we had to copy in Spanish. We actually copied it from school books from my cousins from Tijuana. And we would copy a page every day. And when they would come home from work, we would read it to them. And so he wanted to make sure that we didn't miss how to write, how to read. And I did that all the way through high school. And so for my entire experience by the border, it was very clear to me. And I think luckily my dad, may he rest in peace, he wanted me to be able to choose a career wherever I wanted to. So I could live in Mexico because I could speak the language and had the experience, or I can do it in the United States. But he didn't want me to be limited and always believe that if I was bilingual, I was going to have more opportunities. And of course, I mean, that really is what's made a big difference in my career.
Sure, sure. And in those days, you go back and forth to the border like nothing, right?
Like nothing. I mean, literally, vamos a los tacos. Then we just would cross the border. We would, I think, it's kind of crazy. I mean, we got our groceries there, our tortillas, our dry cleaning, our haircut, everything. And then we would see my grandma. And I don't know why, but a friend of mine was visiting. I was in San Francisco and I was in my late 20s. And he was visiting and I don't know why, but he went through my medicine cabinet. And this particular guy actually worked at Oral B in the Bay Area, which is the toothbrush company. I don't know if I was trying to pass a test of his, but he said, "Where did you get this toothbrush?" And I said, "I got it in Mexico." He goes, "Man," he goes, "they outlawed these in the United States 50 years ago." Because the bristles are so hard that they scrape off the enamel, and you really should not you should get rid of this. And I thought, okay, note to self, you're not supposed to bleed every time that you brush your teeth.
That's an example of being too Mexican. Tell us, because you say you were introverted and your personality changed because your entire environment did, and you reacted to that. But tell us specifically about the number 41 and the first time you heard that number. This will scoot into Honor 41, so pay attention. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's very interesting because this happened to me when I was 14 years old. And I'm not really a big person on numerology or anything, but of course 14 translates to 41 if you flip it. And I was shy and I had a tough time kind of connecting. I think I was also shy because I was gay and I didn't know what that meant. And I was befriended by this group of kids who I thought were my friends. And this is something I've never shared before. They actually nicknamed me Hollywood. And at first I thought, oh, look, that's kind of cool. Except that what I found out quickly was that there was a movie that was called Mannequin that was released in the 80s. And Mannequin went with, I can't remember, but basically the mannequin becomes a woman in secret. And her friend sidekick was a very flamboyant guy who was nicknamed Hollywood. And so when I said, no, I don't like that, don't call me that, they said, okay, we're going to call you 41. And I thought, okay, that's better than calling me Hollywood in my mind. And so for a good half a year, 41, and I really thought maybe that these guys are my friends. And we were hanging out at our house. We had a swimming pool, so we were hanging out. And my dad hears them calling me 41. And I was, I remember he yells at me to come into the garage and he goes, ¿Por qué te están diciendo eso? I mean, he was angry. He was already, and I was like, oh, es mi apodo. I was literally proud of the fact that I had a nickname. And he said, ¿Qué? Te están diciendo maricón. ¿Eres maricón? And I just still remember going, oh man, okay. These guys are not my friends. And he asked me right then if I was gay, and I said, no. And he went outside and kicked them all out. And I was, of course, embarrassed and forbid me from hanging out with them. And now they are calling me 41 all the time. And it became a real source of a lot of pain. And maybe because I'm a Gemini, like I could literally have this whole experience of being bullied and harassed in daylight, basically, because nobody really knew what 41 was except all the people that knew what it meant. And so I could say, oh, tell them not to call me that. And then I was involved.
It never occurred to you to ask what the 41 meant or why, because it was years later when you found out what it meant. And that was through our friend Roland Palencia.
I just figured that maybe in Mexico, if you're 41 years old and not married, then that's when the whisper starts. Or maybe I thought that was like the magical age where someone can be single. That was my logic. And nobody told me. And it took 28 years. And literally 28 years of pain where this number would keep showing up in my life. And it was always like a dagger. More so when I was younger. I mean, I left San Diego because I felt that if I left San Diego, I could leave that behind me. I could leave being not gay because I knew I was gay, but I felt like like they discovered or put me in front of something that I wasn't ready to deal with.
Were they calling you 41 or were they calling you 41?
Both. 41 was, these particular kids, half of them lived in Tijuana and half of them lived in the US. So they knew that experience. They knew what that was. And so what I didn't know that, and I was sharing this over dinner with Roland Palencia 2 months before I turned. Yeah, I'm sorry?
A legendary man in our community.
Oh, yeah. I mean, el padrino, nuestro padrino. I started sharing with him over dinner. I said, oh, I'm going to be 41 in 2 months. I hate this number. And I just started, he could tell that I was very emotional about it. And he said, well, how did those kids know the story of a 41? And I said, well, what story? And then he proceeds to tell me that in Mexico City, November 18, 1901, there was a group of men that had been known to gather. And on this particular night, there was 42 of them that gathered for a dance, un baile. 42 of them.
A fancy one,
A fancy one, dressed up in high society, half dressed as men, half dressed as women. It was a private party. But at one point, the cops come, they knew who they were, they beat them up and throw them in jail. One of them was the son-in-law of the then president, Porfirio Diaz. So they released him, and the remaining 41 were eventually disappeared for being gay. And from then on, calling someone 41 was the same as calling them a maricón or un joto, but without using those terms. And ironically enough,
their lives were ruined. Their lives were ruined.
Their lives were ruined. The families did not want to have anything to do with them, or if they had money, some were paid, but they had to leave town. And ironically enough, there's going to be a movie that comes out this year that's about Los 41.
No.
El baile de los 41. It's very, very cool. It's I think it's going to come out in November, but they might be changing that because of COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think when I found out, I became obsessed, and I was like, what is this? What is this? And when I heard the story, I honestly felt healed. And I think it was because all of a sudden I could see myself part of the past, and I wasn't alone. And the suffrage was something I had now in common with these guys. And granted, my life wasn't destroyed yet, but I felt destroyed. And I thought, this can't end like this. And I was thinking, and all of a sudden I thought, you know what? I'm going to start an organization, and I'm going to call it Honor 41. That sounds in English and in Spanish, Honor 41. And it was kind of connected to a group in LA called Honor Pack that was doing some really, really great work.
Wonderful work. Wonderful.
Beautiful work to support candidates that are running for office, a lot LGBTQ, but just LGBTQ friendly. And so this was an organization that they had a connection. So when I started getting involved, I connected to it, kept Honor because that's a component that again is bilingual, and added the 41.
And what you were doing, you were honoring those 41. I mean, it all makes sense. You're a very clever fellow.
Oh, thank you.
And now what to do with it? So you come up with Honor 41, and then you go, but what is it? What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, and I think, the thing that struck me at the time was that there were a lot of efforts to somewhat normalize what it meant to be LGBTQ. At the time, LGBT, because they added the Q later. But we as Latinos are just never featured or never included. And I thought, that we're just missing in media. We're missing when it comes to the mainstream. We're missing with gay mainstream media. Latino media, for the most part, whether it was communications or news, made fun of us. They still don't even call us the right terms. And so I thought, okay, well, again, rather than just wait, why don't we do something to celebrate our people? Because there are young kids that are coming up after us that really have no role models and don't have anywhere to look. There are great organizations that have been doing really great work for a long time, like Bienestar is one in Los Angeles. There are others throughout the country, but those tend to be about, almost like when something has happened. So it's usually about HIV support or something kind of the once you've come out. So I wanted to do something that was very intimate and very personal. And at the time, there was nothing more personal than your computer screen that you start looking at porn, your banking information, and research. And I wanted someone to look up and say gay Latino, gay Latina, trans Latina, and that they would come across what now has become the 41 list. And the 41 list is the ode to the original 41, but it is celebrating 41 LGBTQ role models in our community.
Every year.
Every year. Well, yeah, I mean, the organization's been around for 8 years, but so far we've done 5 lists. I had a little bit of a break in between to, family stuff. And it feels incredible. It feels incredible to have so many people share their stories. And you, of course, are one of our 41. But the stories are so powerful. I was so
honored, but when you came, I asked you, what's with the 41? Because I didn't know that story either. We have a short clip here that gives you an idea of the Under 41, and then we're going to talk a couple specific stories, but you get an idea here. Can we roll that, Abelardo?
It's kind of like that, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it, accept yourself, and freaking rock it. Go blaze a trail, go be a badass, and don't doubt yourself or think of yourself less than, because your ability to embrace yourself is your secret weapon.
Right. We are so built into a world of fear, and they try to make us be more fearful, right? I don't want to be afraid of having brown skin. I don't want to be afraid of being gay. I don't want to be afraid of being HIV positive or a man in recovery. I just have to be strong for me so that I can help other people, right?
And really be who you are and lean into that. I wish I would have leaned more into that and said, you know what, this is how I feel, this is how I want to identify at a much early age. Even though I'm still young, but I just feel like with the young people that I work with now, they're 16, identify as trans folks, and I'm just wow, I wish I would have embraced that when I was much younger.
Hubo un suceso bien horrible donde asesinaron a un joven gay de aquí de Puerto Rico, y eso, ¿verdad?, estremeció la isla. Hubo inclusive vigilias en los Estados Unidos, y eso fue lo que a mí como que me jamaqueó, como decimos aquí en buen puertorriqueño. Porque yo sentía que eso pudo haber sido yo, ¿verdad? En cualquier momento podría ser yo el que estaba caminando por la calle y que de repente...
A lot of the things, and I think most trans people are very resourceful, and we know that if we want to survive, we have to be strong. I got my GED in 2017, and then I immediately got my real estate license. I went to real estate school, and I got my real estate license shortly after I got my GED, and I went to what is considered a conservative brokerage here in San Antonio to try to stand out from the crowd. And they welcomed me, they embraced me, and they've supported me. And because of the support from numerous places, organizations, and my brokerage, I've been able to thrive. And because they did give me a chance.
I wish that existed when I was growing up gay in 1950s East LA, because you really were alone. When you knew you were gay, you really were alone. And as you said earlier, you didn't know what it meant. What would it mean? Do I get a job? Will I be able to work? It's amazing. You interview people in five different cities pretty much, right? The same 5 cities?
No, actually, we've done, since I started, I did 4 years in a row. And on that same year in 2016, my middle brother passed away. My middle brother, George, ironically enough, there's a connection to all this as well. because when my brother was in high school and moved into high school, they started calling him 42.
No.
Yes. And 42 really didn't have any meaning, but you could tell they were already starting to carry that onto him. But he actually said, yeah, so what? I'm 42. And he ended up completely embracing 42. So where I was rejecting 41 left to right, he became 42 and was completely proud, and even had a tattoo here that had 42 on it. He was, that was his nickname. And he just, you know, he handled it, and he was very different than I was. But the one thing with my brother is that he felt he also had a special connection to 42. And for him, he said, something's gonna happen, something's gonna happen. I just feel like, you know, my life is gonna change, something big, maybe I'm gonna have another kid. And sadly, he died when he was 42 years old.
Oh God. And you don't believe in numerology?
You know, literally, this is him, and what, 42 forever. So I've never shared this story because it is so personal, but that year I still had a 41 list, and then the next year I just hit the wall.
Sure.
And I thought, you know, I'm on this treadmill. My job at NHJ was fairly new. I couldn't afford to break down, and mourn for my parents because they were having a tough time. So it just took me longer to do that and embrace what that meant in that relationship. And, you know, it's still hard. And sadly, a year and a half later, my dad got cancer, and then my dad died in 2019. And so it's just been like those moments in life that have you process, what are you doing, what's it for? And I enjoyed and I've loved this project, but it wasn't fun anymore. I couldn't find joy in telling other stories when I was still dealing with my own grief. And so I came back, that this was released back this year. This is the 5th year. And I do it kind of with them in mind as well. I think both my dad and my brother are part of my life in a different way now. But both of them have had so much of an influence in my life. And now I'm able to grieve, but also keep moving on and figured out how to let go of some of that frustration and anger that comes with it. So,
you know, there's so many stories. Because I've gone online and heard a lot of them, and they're amazing. But there was one that you told me, I didn't see it, about that little boy and the doll. Can you tell us that story? Because it's a killer.
Yeah, this is Inoue Vargas, incredibly talented artist, designer. And Inoue is from Mexico. And Inoue talks about that when he was, I think, 4 or 5 years old, and he was in a very abusive household. His mom left with his sister and left him and his brother with his dad. And he knew he was already gay. He was having trouble with that. His dad was basically, you know, hitting him left and right to make him more of a man. And Inoue ended up stealing a doll from his neighbor, and the dad found it and you know, beat him and took the doll away. And he said, "No, los niños no juegan con muñecas, you know, ¿qué quieres?" And so he gave him like a Superman action figure. And this kid was just so talented. He ends up converting it into Wonder Woman.
He transitioned
her and made her Wonder Woman, like all of our trans amazing women in our network. And the dad found it and hit him and took it away. And he ends up going to this little, the movie Coco reminds me a little bit of kind of like how he talked about this little shack outside of his house. And he took a piece of wood and he literally carved it into a woman, shape of a woman. He took the hair from the corn husk and created, and he was just like, that was his secret until the dad found it, threw it away and beat him up. And he just endured so much abuse and hate. And he eventually left his home at 12 years old and to come to the United States. And it took him probably 5 to 7 years to actually get to cross the border.
Wow.
And you see the beautiful work that he creates now. And it's unbelievable to imagine that a person who experienced so much trauma and hate can create so much beauty. And I think, I think that's part of what we're all trying to do is how do we overcome the traumas, whether they were intentional or not? How do we overcome the things that are put in front of us? How do we help others overcome some of those? And I think the one thing that surprised me about when I started Honor 41 and asking people to tell their story, I said, look, most of us didn't have any role models. No one was there to tell us a little bit about what it was going to be like. And these videos are going to tell that kid,
of course,
hey, this is okay. This is part of the transition. This is part of coming out. This is part of that. And I'm humbled by the fact that people can share so much about their experiences. And I think it's I would have never guessed that something that caused me so much pain for 28 years would end up being a source of giving to other people and helping others heal as it still heals me. So I feel it's God.
I suspect that most people are anxious to share their story for the very reason you say. They know that some young kid is there, wherever he is, whatever, Fresno or wherever the hell he is. And if they're telling their story can help that kid somewhere, then that's worth it all. So I think it's tremendously cathartic, and it can help so many people. It's quite beautiful. It's quite beautiful. I want to back up for 1 second, and then our friend Abelardo said that he had a trailer of my film, and I only want to show it only because we can end high, as opposed to that story about that little boy, which is killing me.
But you know what? But I will also share that something I didn't expect that is great is that the parents of the kids are watching these videos. And when you see Ricardo Lara, when you see Dan Guerrero, when you see David Damien, when you see Bambi Salcedo, when you see Maria Roma, like when you see these role models that are changing the world, that live authentically, that live their lives, whether they're HIV positive, whether they're trans, whatever it is, parents are watching this and going, my son is gonna be okay. My daughter's gonna be okay.
That's
or
true.
I have a parishioner in my church that I think is trans. It has opened the eyes in our culture that is so stuck and sometimes backwards, but because we incorporate family, religion, and tradition in a way that it makes it hard for people to break through, we're now creating a space where people can see a bright light when people feel darkness. So it is emotional and it can be heavy, but all the stories are inspiring. And I think it's because our intent is to bring light to those that are in darkness.
There was one little thing we ran over, and I remembered because I thought it was so interesting, back to the Mexico City, about where the word Joto comes from. I found that so interesting.
Yes, actually, I found this out later through Uriel Quesada, who is, it's funny, I find all these things from
that
people.
Book, excuse me, that book, what is it, Brown
Queer Stories, right?
No, Brown Voices.
Brown Queer, oh my God, we should
oh my
know that.
God, I have it here. It's a fantastic book. Oh my God.
I have it too, but I don't know why I'm running out of.
Well, you think we'd know the damn title. I want to say
Brown Voices. It's Queer Brown Voices.
Okay, get that book. It is.
We'll put it on the chat. This is embarrassing.
Yeah,
but,
I know it's embarrassing. Anyway, but tell them about Joto. Maybe I'll find the book.
Look for the book. So it turns out that the 41 or the 42 were put in jail en la sección J de la cárcel. So that's section J. So when they started referring to los Jotos, las Jotas, that really started the word Joto. And it's translated to something that has been a derogatory term for Latinos So again, it's interesting that we know words have an origin, and that's where that came from. But Uriel is from Costa Rica, and Roland is from Guatemala. So I find it odd that these two Central Americans told me about my Mexican story.
Oh, God.
But they're brilliant, so I'm glad they know.
I can't find the damn book, but it's so excellent. I used it. I taught at UCLA a course called Gaytino, and it was one of our must readings. It's wonderful. So I think let's show my trailer.
Yeah.
And then you and I will just wrap it up because you've seen it before. And
I've seen it 3 times, and I've seen the movie twice. So absolutely, I'd love to.
Oh, you've seen the movie twice?
I have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. All right.
New York City, Central Park. We'll get to that later. East Los Angeles, the late 1940s. Truman is in the White House and I'm in the 3rd grade. I'll hold while you count the rings around my neck. Maricón. Hey, queer. I can't move. Everybody's looking at me. I wish I were invisible. Basically, a Chicano is a Mexican-American who is not kidding. We arrived in New York City, Valentine's Day 1962, during a snowfall after a 12-hour all-night flight on a prop.
5, 6, 7, 8, and turn, back step. This isn't working. You gotta give me more. 5, 6, 7, 8.
The gay mecca of the East Coast Fire Island. On this small tip of Long Island, I see for the first time men walking hand in hand, like it's the most natural thing in the world. I become disco slut. Studio 54, Liza, Bianca, Warhol. He writes about Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta founding the United Farm Workers Union. I jump into the Latino community with a vengeance. Dad wants to know once and for all if his eldest son is gay, and Carlos spills his guts for the price of a burrito. Yo soy Chicano, señores. Nací al lado americano. Para México soy pocho. Y I los guacho.
The thing is that all of us are doing the same thing, whether you're writing the book or you're doing a painting or creating a dance piece or doing Honor 41. And I, when I was doing the play all over the country, I would meet, as you have in your gig, all these young, empowered, talented, young gay Latinos, men and women and trans, and they're not afraid. They're not putting up with nothing. They are not putting up with nothing. I'm so proud of them. I am so proud of them, and I'm so inspired by them, as I've been inspired by you.
Thank you. It's, I think it is that beautiful inspiration that happens when we tell our stories. I mean, I connected with so many things in your play and connects again with other people. So far, I've done 205 interviews. Wow. There have, just this last year, was 11 different Latino nationalities, 28 cities, 17 states. Wow. The videos have been seen in over 100 countries. And, it just matters that one video reaches that one person.
That's right.
Just feel like, I'm not alone. And I want to make sure that people see it is queer brown voices.
Good boy.
I have read these stories. I don't know why we both blanked on that. But again, whether it's a book, it's videos,
yes.
it's historical, it's storytelling, it connects us to people and connects us to each other. So check out honor41.org and visit and see the profiles of all these amazing people, including Dan.
And oh yeah, I remember you're saying they're usually about 4 to 5 minutes, and mine went 8. But that's only because I've lived such a long time. That's all.
How do you close that? And there's no way to do that.
I guess not. But anyway, I love you. Thank you so much.
Are we doing any questions or we're okay?
Oh, yes, we are. I was about to dump you. Yeah, go on. Do it.
I've been dumped before, fine. Usually it's after a couple more drinks, though.
Oh, yeah, let me go for that.
Yeah, this is a happy hour after all.
Right.
Happy hour. So we have a question here for Alberto from Ricardo Ordóñez. How do you select or identify your yearly Honor 41 honorees?
It's a good process. I start with about 200 names and start kind of drilling and, looking at what's happening. Indirectly, there's 5 basic screens. They have to be Latino, whatever Latino experience that is. They have to be LGBTQ, however they identify. I also look for a wide age diversity. So the oldest to this point has been 82 and the youngest has been 12. And then I look at geography. I try to make sure that, I could literally do 41 gay men in LA for 25 years and never have to go anywhere.
Without leaving your neighborhood.
Without leaving the neighborhood, exactly. And so, so I want to make sure that there's accurate representation, that the trans family members of our family members are well represented. So, I start dwindling down the list, and if I have 10 politicians, well, I'm only pick 2. If we have 3 teachers, we pick 1, and so on. So it's a process that takes about 6 months, and then I would say it takes another 6 months to actually film everyone and kind of cut and edit the stories and then start promoting on social media. So,
and who films it? Who films them? Do they film themselves? Because I noticed that. Oh wow!
He came here with his little iPhone. He said, "I'm expecting a camera crew," and he walks in with this little thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and you become resourceful. Sometimes that plays out in whether I'm going to be able to include a story from Iowa, because if I don't have the money to travel there, or we can't meet somewhere, because it's a self-funded project. So I try to do it around my work travel. When I think one year my work at the time was out of Boston. I flew into DC on the red eye. I did 3 interviews in DC, got on the plane, I got on the train, went to Philadelphia, did 2 interviews in Philadelphia, stayed the night, got up in the morning, went to New York City, did 4 interviews in New York City, got on the train, went to Boston and did 3 interviews. So like in a weekend, I did like 12 interviews. But we got to make it work, and we got to be resourceful. This year, I had 2 interviews that I did that were on Zoom. And I think the reality is that that's going to be a component of the future. Sure. I don't think it's as good, or maybe we just have to all get more comfortable. But something happens when you're talking to someone in person and you start talking about something that's been so personal. And the one thing about why I don't do them live is because I don't want anybody to feel exploited or to share something that's come out that they never expected to share. So I always want to make sure people feel really good about their story. And I don't give them creative control, but I share the story with them before it comes out so they can process it and go, okay, this is going to be out there. Because once it's out there, it's out there. But that's the hard part. And I think one of the things I'm looking at doing for the future is giving people the opportunity to answer a certain amount of questions and submit their own video and their own story, because I think we all have a story.
Yes.
And I want to start really picking within the 41, folks that have passed away, folks that are a part of our community that we can that some people don't know the story about, and that through their friends and through photographs that we can bring life to the impact that they had in their community. They don't have to be superstars. They just, sometimes we're ahead of their time, and in a time now where we can still celebrate them, then I think it's an opportunity to do that.
All right. Well, we have a message here on Facebook from Lourdes Lizarraga Manriquez. She says, I will be using this as part of my high school curriculum. Thank you very much.
Oh.
We have Mel Melo Dominguez, who's thanking you for sharing, for doing, and for being. And I guess he would like to be part of this, love to be part of Honor 41 as well.
Great.
And then we posted the link to Queer Brown Voices.
Great.
Oh,
Thank you.
good.
The Amazon link, so you could go ahead and check it out for yourselves. Well, that, unless there's anything else, Dan?
No, I think that's it. I think that's that's all, folks. Wasn't that Bugs Bunny? I love Bugs Bunny.
Do you remember all the Bugs Bunny moments where he was in drag and really, like, I was thinking, wait a minute, there are so many subjective things that happen in
go back and look at that. No, I didn't ever notice that. I love Bugs Bunny because he and Daffy Duck were my favorite because they were so sassy, those two.
I think they were gay.
I think you're right. That's probably why we like them, you know.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for having me. And again,
oh, mijo, thank you. Thank you so much. And maybe we can see each other live again one day.
I like that.
All right. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of our viewers for tuning in. If you enjoyed our In Casa sessions, please consider joining us as a member of La Plaza. It's people like you that make these programs possible. So I'm gonna put the link on the chat and on the Facebook as well. Also, thanks to our sponsors. We have SoCal Gas, and we also have, let's see, the National Endowment for the Humanities and California Humanities as part of the CARES Act. I'm going to just real briefly give you what's coming up on the next En Casa con la Plaza sessions. We have a full week next week. We usually have 3 programs, sometimes 4, but we're going to have a whopping 5. Wow. Starting with En Casa con la Plaza Cocina, our usual Monday series taking place in the kitchens of some of our finest cooks, chefs, restaurant owners, and so on. We have Lucy Thompson Ramirez from Pez Cantina here downtown, demonstrating shrimp and avocado salad and a cocktail.
That I like. That sounds good.
On Tuesday, and this is on Zoom and Facebook Live, of course. On Tuesday, we're teaming up once more with the Mexican American Cultural History Foundation with their Mexican American History Makers series with Nancy de los Santos. I think you know who that is.
Of course.
A writer, producer, and director, along with Marisa Lopez, Dr. Marisa Lopez, a UCLA professor. On Wednesday, special treat for the young ones, Mario A. Hernandez, my assistant here at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. He's going to be demonstrating papeles tradicionales, showing us how to make some papel picado and also the paper flowers. So looking forward to that.
For the weddings, you got to put them on your lowrider, right? Those Kleenex carnations.
As many of you know or may not know, next Saturday is the 50th anniversary commemoration of the Chicano Moratorium. That infamous march, that famous march that took place in East LA. We start off on Friday with entertaining program, Songs of the Chicano Moratorium with writer and editor Agustin Gursa. That's on Friday the 28th. And then on Saturday, a special Saturday show, Inside the Chicano Moratorium 50 years later with Rosalio Munoz, activist, writer, and one of the co-organizers of the Chicano Moratorium. You could find these and all our upcoming sessions on our webpage, laplazala.org, on our Facebook page. You could find our past sessions if you joined in late, or if you want to see this one more time, as I think a lot of us do. We're going to please join us on YouTube. Our YouTube page is youtube.com, laplazala. You'll find this one, and then the more than 50 sessions that we've done already, including a handful of Dan Guerrero's Happy Hour. So
that's scary. I mean, you know, that's the thing of it. You'll go online and you'll see an interview you did in 1999 and it's there. You're like, oh my God. You know, there you go. Your interview is going to be up there forever.
Thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I love that you guys are doing this. This is a really, you know, this is a time of darkness, sadly. And we hope that there is more light that's coming. I'm excited about what's happening in November so far with our potential changes. Well, we won't get political, but we need to make sure we're all getting out to vote. And thank you for having me, because we really need to continue to have these positive conversations. So thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. Abelardo, see you soon. Gracias, mijo.
All right, adiós a todos.
Adiós. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches a todos. We'll see you
Adiós.
soon. Thank you so much.